first we'll start with some brief introductions about our speakers as well as IBM Kubecost. Then we're going to dive into some recent feature releases from our 2.7 and 2.8 release. We're also going to provide you with a little sneak peek of our 2025 roadmap so we can show you the focus areas that we'll be prioritizing throughout the rest of the year. And then we'll also share some resources and next steps of how you can get started with using these newest features. And then we'll end with a Q&A. If you have any questions throughout the duration of today's session, feel free to type them into your Q&A feature there on your webinar console, and we will get to as many as we can during the Q&A portion of this. I also wanted to flag that we will be recording today's session, so if you cannot stay for the entire thing or you want to share it with others, just be on the lookout for an email with a link to that recording, and we will likely be sending that out probably next Monday or Tuesday. So moving right along here, our first speaker we have is Kai. Kai is our product manager here at IBM Kubecost, and he's been really hands-on with a lot of the features that we'll be talking about today, especially around the monitoring and optimization features. If you've attended any of our past webinars, you've probably seen him before. He's really great at breaking down complex concepts and really explaining things that make sense for the teams that are really in the trenches doing these optimizations. And next up, we have Mike. He is a senior solutions engineer. He has a ton of real-world experience working with customers of all sizes, and he helps them get up and running with Kubecost to make sure that it's tailored to their specific environments. And he's seen just about every type of deployment scenario, so I'm really excited that he's here today to really help talk you through some of these new features in action. And with that, I will pass it over to Kai.
Hey everyone, just want to talk a little bit about Kubecost at a high level before we dive in, make sure for those who maybe aren't as familiar, we are the leading solution for real-time Kubernetes cost visibility and optimization. As you can see, we work with some of the leading companies across many different industries, really all industries from finance, healthcare to small tech companies. And some of the things that make Kubecost really special is not only are we able to run across all the major cloud providers, Azure, AWS, GCP, OCI, but we are also able to run and monitor your costs for on-premises resources as well. So we have tons of companies who leverage Kubecost to monitor, pull the costs in for their bare metal clusters. Maybe they're running Red Hat OpenShift, and they're able to get those costs kind of in the same environment as their kind of CS costs. So we manage, like I said, over $5 billion in Kubernetes spend now, which is kind of crazy given, we kind of started as a small open source project about 5 years ago, and now we've expanded to teams all across the US, Europe, and APAC. So with that, I'll hand it over to my teammate, Mike, and we'll start to dive into some of the new features that we've launched in the last few months.
Cool. Thanks, Scott. Hey, everyone. So we're going to talk about some new features of Kubecost. We're going to talk a little bit about some enhancements to a couple of features that have been around for a little bit. As part of the 2.7 release, we introduced some collections enhancements. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about a couple of other things along the lines of cluster diagnostics and then custom profiles. We're going to start with collections, though, some enhancements to collections that have been made. So for folks that have not seen it or may not be familiar, collections is a way that lets us allocate Kubernetes costs and out-of-cluster costs. So things like databases, storage, things that run outside the Kubernetes cluster. So we can then roll that up along with your Kubernetes cost to get a comprehensive view of an application, service, a product, something like that. We've also got, we can assign resources to teams and business units. So this lets us create these teams, business units. We can roll these up into categories so we can then see accurate chargeback and showback. As part of those new groupings, categories, some of these new features are going to be things like smarter overlap handling, and then the ability to share some common resources. Overlap, real quick, excuse me. So we do see sometimes there are cases where we will have overlap in cost, and this is typically something along the lines of where we have a collection where, say, for example, an application team collection has costs that have a label that say this is application. And then the data team collection is responsible for, say, a namespace that contains objects with that label. So that overlap would represent then that kind of that combined cost of those two, of the difference between those two things. Let me share my screen here, and we'll take a look at. Look at this. There we go. Okay. Collections, I'm going to start with this one down here. So just real quick for, if y'all haven't seen it before, collections is a way then, as I mentioned, we can group together cloud cost and Kubernetes cost. What I'm looking at here for this application team collection, we've got things within the cloud domain that have a label of cost center and value production. And then we've got things within the Kubernetes domain that have a label of end and a value of prod. So it lets us group these two things together as a collection. One of the new features then is we can aggregate these by category instead of collection. And this, I'm gonna go down here, and the one we were just looking at was that platform, that application team that's part of this platform engineering category. Here we go. Now what we're looking at is this is an overall category for platform engineering that contains multiple different collections. This application team collection here is the one we were just looking at. When we're looking at this, we can group these together in some sort of common grouping. So what I've got here is a platform engineering category comprised of these different collections. We also have a shared collection. So what this is, a shared collection lets us share the cost of this collection with these collections. If I click on this OpenShift collection, we can see here that this collection basically is comprised of the OpenShift namespace. So that cost, this dollar amount here for that cost then is going to be shared across my other collections in this category. I have different ways I can share the cost. We can share it as weighted, which we have right now. So it's going to allocate this shared amount. The larger tenant or the larger collection is going to bear the larger cost of that shared cost, whereas the lesser expensive ones are going to have a lesser amount of the shared cost. We can also share this evenly across collections so that cost is just evenly distributed across those collections. This overlap is what we were talking about, kind of referred to earlier. And the way this works is this overlap is going to be those resources that are going to be contained within the higher priority collection. So this amount that's deducted represents an overlap with the data team. This shared cost is its portion of this shared cost up here to get to a total chargeback cost. So this gives us that accurate chargeback capability. So now we can understand not only the overlap, so this is deducted from the...
Hey Mike, I'm not sure we can hear you anymore. Just take over for Mike here. Let me just share screen and kind of close out this collections demo here. So yeah, like Mike was saying, you know, we can kind of share the cost from this namespace, and now you're able to kind of pull in the overlap costs and the shared costs, and you're able to get a kind of final chargeback cost for each of the teams in a given category. So you can think of a category as really like a business dimension, and then you kind of think of each collection as a business unit. So this is really how we're starting to drive teams to the category level so that they can very easily get final chargeback costs for each of their business units, which contain or can contain shared costs as well as overlapping cost reductions. So let me. So this is kind of what's new in this all kind of came in Kubecost 2.7 that we added this ability to share costs within a category. So the next new feature, if you can see the slides, is revamped cluster diagnostics. So if you're familiar with Kubecost pre 2.7. The diagnostics were maybe a little bit more challenging to obtain. They maybe required you to dig into the logs or kind of go into each cluster to understand, if it's reporting to the primary. So there is now post Kubecost 2.7 a dedicated navigation icon for the Kubecost diagnostics, and you get much more granular visibility into the data that's reporting from the agent clusters to the primary cluster. So it's going to be much easier to kind of get the confidence you need to say, hey, look, I've got confidence that all of my clusters are reporting into the primary. I can just go ahead and start checking out reports, running, optimization, whatever it needs to be. So I'll just kind of share my screen here and do a quick demo of this. Share screen, Kubecost. Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay, I think. So, you can see here we have a new diagnostics tab just above settings, but below teams. And we can see now I have, the diagnostics are passing for all 4 of my clusters. If any diagnostics were failing for any of the clusters, you'd be able to kind of see that here and quickly kind of filter to those. So, on the primary cluster, you have a little, on all the clusters, maybe I'll start with like agent 1, you can see the provider, you can see the Kubecost version. This is going to be the Kubecost version of the agent. And you can see the last time we've received data from this agent. So I'm on East Coast. It was about 20 minutes ago or so. And, you can also see the last diagnostics run. So when was the last time we actually ran a diagnostics check to make sure we're getting all the data we expect. And then we give some visibility as well into each of the things that our diagnostics service is checking. So is it emitting the Kubecost data? Are the Kubecost pods, have they killed or out of memory? Are there any pending pods? This is actually something we see quite a lot. Pods get caught in that pending state and teams don't recognize it. Do we have the storage and the ETL we need? Are we getting the Prometheus metrics that we need as well? So we're doing all these checks, and you can actually just kind of jump to this cluster if you want on your allocations or assets page from right here. On the primary cluster as well, you see we have all this kind of same information. And on the primary cluster, we can actually go a little bit deeper. This is kind of the diagnostics page that you're familiar with from pre 2.7. So you can get a little bit more detail on the primary cluster. Why? Because the primary cluster needs a little bit more information. So the primary cluster also has some further diagnostics. Again, this is consistent with what you had pre-Kubecost 2.7, but it still exists. You can still see all the ETL files. And now you have kind of an improved diagnostics experience overall, and B, improved diagnostics experience for the secondary clusters, which previously you may have to have gone into those secondary clusters themselves and checked that all that data was being emitted properly. So that is a little bit about the new diagnostics. Come back to my slides here. Custom profiles for request right sizing. As a lot of you hopefully are aware, Kubecost has container request right sizing recommendations, and that has helped a lot of our users and teams save millions of dollars. Truly, it's kind of our primary savings insight. And one of the things we have a lot of teams do is kind of customize the way Kubecost gives those recommendations. So now one of the new features we added in 2.7 is you can actually save the configuration that is generating the recommendations in Kubecost. So that's just going to make it a lot easier to go in and out of your various profiles that you're using for container right sizing, right? Maybe you want a development profile for your development clusters. Maybe you want a custom profile for some of your production clusters. And this can be driven via Helm or the UI. I'll do just a quick demo of what this looks like via the UI, but just know that you can do this via Helm as well. We have a lot of users who prefer that experience. So I'll share screen again. Okay. So this is going to be on our savings tab under Insights. And of course, we're specifically talking about the container request sizing card here. So just to rehash this for those, again, who this might be new for, you can see current requests for RAM and CPU, as well as average and max usage. So obviously here, this container is massively over provisioned. It doesn't need nearly this much CPU or RAM, given its max usage. And so Kubecost, based on the usage metrics we see, tries to generate or produce a recommended request. So of course you don't want, you want to have some buffer on top of max usage, but you certainly don't need this much buffer at all. So you can kind of, if you come into this edit panel, you can kind of customize how much headroom or cushion Kubecost should keep on top of the current max utilization. But if you don't want to use max utilization, in theory, you could come in here and use percentile of average or percentile of max. And you can kind of say, so again, this all existed pre 2.7. You could say, okay, development target utilization is going to be 80%, essentially saying I want a 20% buffer. Maybe if it's production, it's 65% target utilization, 35% buffer. Or you can customize this, right? Maybe I want, for CPU, maybe I want to use some percentile of the max, right? Because, maybe just CPU is bursty on startup. I'm going to say, we're going to use percentile of max, and we're going to say target utilization is 75%. And then, RAM, I do want to use max, and I want target utilization to be 70%. So you can customize this. And then what you can do is give this configuration a name now. So this is what's new, is you can actually name this configuration. I'll call it Kai's webinar example, and I can click save. And so now this configuration is saved. I can click apply, and I can filter to the workloads where this kind of profile is relevant. So maybe it's in the Acme Fitness namespace. I want to use this kind of profile. But maybe then I want to go back and clear my filters and say, okay, but on the demo app namespace, we can look at this, and this can be development, right? We can go more aggressive on our sizing here, so we can update the recommendations. But then if I want to go back to the other profile, it is still saved here as Kai's webinar example. You can see we saved all the configuration and then reapply it. So it just makes it a lot easier to navigate and build out your container request right sizing reports. All right, come back to slides here. Awesome. So this one I don't have a demo for. This is going to be a harder thing to show in the UI. But another one of the big features we just released just last week as part of Kubecost 2.8 is revamped custom CSV pricing. So as I mentioned, at the top, a lot of our users leverage Kubecost to pull together the Kubernetes cost from like EKS, AKS, as well as their on-prem or OpenShift self-managed clusters. So we can pull it all together into the Kubecost allocations page. And for users who are maybe running self-managed clusters or on-prem OpenShift clusters, they leverage custom CSV pricing to tell Kubecost how much they want to charge for their various hardware or resources. So we've made a few key additions to this experience to make it a lot more impactful for these users. So number one, prior to Kubecost 2.8, you used to have to provide one of these custom CSV pricing sheets for each cluster. So if you're a customer, of course, with thousands of clusters, that can be a big challenge or just a onerous user experience. So now you can upload just one CSV pricing sheet. You can put it at the primary cluster, upload it, I mean, to the Helm chart at the primary cluster, and then that pricing sheet will be used across all of your clusters. So we still have the old experience. So if you want, different pricing sheets for each cluster, you still have that flexibility. But now if you have, a set of clusters running on a consistent set of hardware where you want a consistent set of prices, you can just upload one custom pricing sheet to the primary cluster and you're done. So even if you have thousands of clusters, we can use these prices. The other kind of key addition, if you go back a slide, the other key addition here is now these prices will be applied retroactively. So again, if you look at pre-Kubecost 2.8, you upload the Kubecost pricing sheet, it's going to use those prices just kind of that point in time going forward, that point in time being whenever you deployed or upgraded to that Helm chart. Now, if you use the custom pricing sheets, you have the ability to actually take those prices and apply it to all the data in your Kubernetes, in your Kubecost deployment, so that it gets applied historically to the old data that was monitored by Kubecost as well. And then we also have massively improved the logging and error messages. So actually, this is going to be on the next slide. You can see we actually have built into the UI some error checking and warnings for, we will actually go in and try and parse the CSV, and any issues or warnings we see will surface to you in the UI itself, so that you don't have to, just pray or hope or rely on a Kubecost engineer to help you create these custom CSV pricing sheets. We will help surface these errors and warnings to you right in the UI, again, so that when you come into Kubecost, we want you to be able to trust the data you see. And if you don't have any warnings or errors, you can be rest assured that the custom pricing sheet was formatted correctly and is being applied as expected. So that's a little bit about the custom CSV pricing. Really excited to get everyone's feedback on that. If you are running on-premises clusters, this is brand new, just launched last week. And the other part of our 2.8 release, again, which went out last week, is a new ClickHouse backend. So this is in beta. I want to be very clear about that. This is a beta release, but it has massive performance and scale improvements. So I attached some graphs here at the bottom, which I think are amazing. What we're seeing for cloud cost queries, so cloud cost is the queries for your cloud bill, we are seeing massive performance improvements. You can see even at the small end of just doing 7-day queries, it's coming back from like 5 to 10 times faster query time execution. And as you get to like things like 90-day queries or more granular queries, maybe for custom or no aggregation, we're seeing like 30 times performance improvements, which is just amazing and is really going to help organizations who are running Kubecost at scale, which can be, we now see teams running Kubecost with millions of cores. So this is going to be a key deliverable for anybody using Kubecost at scale. And as you can see as well, it doesn't just apply to cloud costs. We see massive performance improvements on the allocation side as well. And again, as you get more kind of granular, that's where you see, or more granular or more time. So just like the more data you're querying, the bigger the performance and improvement. So you can see here, 60-day namespace query, over 60x query time enhancement from ClickHouse backend. So really, really excited to roll this out as part of 2.8. If you want to try it out, I would encourage you, to reach out to us beforehand so that we can, be on alert for your messages and feedback from your trial of ClickHouse beta backend. But if you do want to try it out, it is very much just like one flag in the Helm chart. As you can see, it's just, Kubecost aggregator use db v3 equals true. And that's all you need to do to enable it. This will run both the old database version, DuckDB, as well as the new database version, ClickHouse. This will run both, just to make migration very easy and straightforward. That will be, the design choice we have for both the beta and GA is to run both databases until you're fully moved over to the new database, and then we'll kind of spin down DuckDB after that. The other thing I'll note here is not only is this delivering massive performance and scale improvements, but this is actually lowering the compute needed to run the Kubecost product itself. So it will increase the storage needed to run Kubecost itself, but it will decrease the compute needed to run Kubecost itself. So overall, we're seeing a reduction in the cost it takes to run Kubecost itself. Why? Because compute is more expensive than storage. So we do, again, we recommend you reach out to us if you're interested in participating in this beta. We recommend reaching out to us so that we can guide you through, how much more storage Kubecost ClickHouse in 2.8 will need, but maybe also how much compute you can kind of back off. But I think this is really exciting, and will help us deliver the Kubecost value to even higher scales and just deliver a better, faster product. And so last but not least, I wanted to give a kind of short overview of what we have planned for the rest of 2025. We're about halfway through 2025, so I wanted to give a quick overview of what we have planned for the rest of the year here. Number one, we are targeting deepening our integrations with Cloudability, Turbonomic, and Instana. So with Turbonomic, we do have a beta integration with them today, whereby you can start to see some of the Turbo actions in the Kubecost UI. So if you're a customer of both products, you don't need to kind of constantly be flipping between the two UIs. You can be able to see the Turbonomic actions in the Kubecost UI itself, and also see the cost impact of those actions, which I think is a net value add for the Turbonomic experience. And then on the Instana side, this is a new integration launched about a month and a half ago, whereby if you are a customer of Instana, you can start to get the Kubecost allocation data piping into your Instana environment. So you can kind of get, we always say using Kubecost is best when we want to help you kind of balance cost and performance. And I think Instana being an application performance monitoring tool, getting cost in there is really impactful, so you can really have a great experience to actually do the balancing of cost and performance. And then our integration with Cloudability, we are actively working on this right now, and actually kind of leads me into the second point. One of the things we're working on is a unified agent that will go across Kubecost, Cloudability, and Turbonomic, so that once this agent is launched, you only need to install and manage one agent, even if you're a customer or a user of all three products. You only have one agent to install and manage, which I know if you have thousands of clusters, it can be a big lift to kind of manage 3 different agents across all 3 of those products. So we're really excited about that. I think it's going to really take the user experience for customers of these 3 products, of which there are many, to the next level. And we are expecting to launch this revamped agent in, I want to say August, sometime late August. But we are going to be offering the beta, this agent as a beta, probably sometime in July. So if you're interested, again, please reach out, and we would love to get you onboarded to the beta version of this agent and start to get your feedback. I should also mention this new agent is going to be Prometheus-less. So if you're running Kubecost today, our agent requires and will install Prometheus. And we've heard a lot of feedback from customers that, Prometheus can be big and heavy and difficult to manage. So the new agent is going to be Prometheus-less, which I think just if you're just a Kubecost customer and you're like, hey, I don't really care so much about, getting the, unification with Cloudability and Turbonomic, well, that's okay. You'll get a ton of value from this as well, because this new agent will be Prometheus-less, lighter weight, easier to manage. So I think that's a pretty cool thing. We're also going to be continuing to invest in our network monitoring page. It's in beta today, so we're going to be GAing it later this year. We're going to be adding in the ability to get cross-zone, cross-region traffic, which is a big request I've gotten. We're going to be improving the data export capabilities, and perhaps most importantly on this, we're going to be improving the scalability of it. For those of you who are familiar with the network monitoring page, it requires installation of our network cost daemon set, which is reading packets coming right off of the kernel. So that's just like a lot of data. It's a huge fire hose of data, and we do have a lot of customers who are at the high ends of scale that just like can't turn this on because it's so much data. So we are going to be improving that and improving scalability of this experience. Optimization. So we are actually actively working on big updates and huge improvements to our optimization experience. We can expect this to launch in August as well. Basically, we want to make the container right sizing and cluster sizing much more actionable. And we are going to be making the Kubecost container right sizing automation much more powerful, where you're going to have controls over the automation for all the clusters right from our UI, and you'll have improved logging, error handling, heartbeat checks on the cluster controller, which is actually running this automation. So I'm very excited to get this into everyone's hands. Again, we expect to launch this in August, and I think I expect customers are going to, help. This is going to help customers take their Kubernetes experience to just the next level, right? When you're ready to go beyond cost monitoring and get to the optimization, it's going to be much easier to do that, especially on areas like development workloads where you're just comfortable turning on our automation. As part of this, we're also going to be adding some resource usage visualizations. So if you're familiar again with Kubecost, all of our dashboards today are a little bit cost focused, right? It's in the name, Kubecost. So we're going to be adding some more kind of usage-based visualizations, especially on kind of the optimization recommendations. So you'll be able to kind of see capacity over time for RAM, CPU, GPU capacity over time, and then you'll also be able to see utilization over time and kind of see how those two things compare. So if you're using like an autoscaler like Carpenter, right, your capacity is going to be super dynamic, and it'll be interesting to see like how that's trending versus your actual usage. And if you're not using Carpenter or some autoscaler, I think this will kind of highlight the need for you to do some sort of cluster sizing, which Kubecost can help with, as well as there's some open source tools that you can look at and we play nice with as well. GPU optimization, getting towards the end here. We launched in, I think it was 2.4. We launched, advanced GPU cost monitoring. So we partnered with NVIDIA to build really granular GPU utilization metrics on top of the NVIDIA DCGM exporter. So today you're able to get, if you're an enterprise user, to be clear, today you're able to get really granular usage and see, oh, this workload is using 21% of the GPU versus without Kubecost. If it's using any GPU at all, it just says, it's either 0, 1. It's either using GPU or it's not. Kubecost is able to get you exactly what % of that GPU is being used. And based on that, today, again, we're able to give recommendations for, hey, look, this workload's only using 21% of the GPU. You've got another workload that's using like 40% of a GPU. like we recommend, sharing these two workloads or setting up sharing techniques on this GPU chip so that these two workloads can consume one GPU instead of running across two. GPUs are crazy expensive. We really want to make this a great experience. And so what we want to add in the second half of this year is automation, so that with a couple clicks of a button, you can actually deploy the sharing techniques that we're recommending. And again, free up GPU capacity, which is extremely expensive. And then finally, we're going to be continuing to shift left. I know that's like a big kind of catch-all phrase you'll hear in the FinOps industry, but we want to continue to leverage our developer workflows, which we integrate tightly with, and kind of get this cost information in the hands of developers kind of further up in their work stream. So we're going to be working on integrations with Terraform. Now that they're also part of the IBM family, we're going to be continuing to leverage our kind of predict API and the ability to get costs before you make some change, kind of pushing those costs and our recommendations further upstream via integrations with CI/CD tools to help teams, instead of reacting to cost overruns, right? We want you to be proactive about, preventing cost overruns. So that I think is going to be the big shift you'll start to see, and maybe you're already seeing it, but I think you'll really start to see that kind of shift later this year. And with that, Dee, do you want to share some resources next steps?
Sure. Thanks, Kai. And I want to apologize to everyone for the technical issues. We happened to lose a speaker halfway through. So thank you to Kai for continuing on despite our issues there. So moving on to some resources and next steps. I did want to flag that we have a 2.7 release blog that is currently live on our website. So if you want to learn more about the 2.7 features we covered today, I did include a link to that in the slide here. And we also have a 2.8 release blog that will be coming very, very soon. If it's not posted this week, it will be posted early next week. And that will share more details for those features that we covered today. I also wanted to flag that on your webinar console there, you will see a widget for a link to download today's slides. So feel free to download that so you can access the link to the 2.7 blog and have access to all the slides we went over today. And then when we send out the recording of this webinar, I will be sure to include a link to the 2.8 blog that we will be publishing very soon. And as always, if you want to upgrade your version of Kubecost to start enjoying these features, just simply run the Helm command here, and you'll be ready to go with testing all of those out. And now we wanted to move on to some questions. We will cover as many as we can before we run out of time here. So feel free to submit any you have in the Q&A feature of your console there. And to start, we had a question from Freddie. He said, I would like to have more details on how to get estimated costs before the deployment. Is it possible to estimate also out of the cluster costs?
Yeah, love this question. And like I said, I do expect this to be a very popular and increasingly popular kind of use case for FinOps in general. So I'll start with the second half. We are focused on the Kubernetes side. So I don't have, Kubecost specifically doesn't have functionality to estimation for out of cluster costs. But I do think Cloudability has some functionality here. And maybe worth, I'm happy to follow up with details on that. But if you're interested in more details on how Kubecost does it, here is a quick blog. Actually, I'm not even totally sure how to share resources here, Dee.
If you send it to me, I will include it in the email to everyone after the webinar.
Cool. Yeah, Dee will share this, but we do have some blogs about how you can leverage our admission controller, which is kubectl cost. And that will kind of automatically give you the insights into, hey, we predict this change or this new deployment will cost this much. It will kind of show it to you right in your CLI. And so we have the API, we have the admission controller, and I believe we have a small GitHub integration as well for this, where we can, again, leveraging the Predict API, we can show you the estimated cost impact for a change or a new workload as a comment in your GitHub PR. So basically the way it works, if you're curious, is we look at the YAML manifest for a given container, and we see, okay, the change is requesting this much more CPU, this much more RAM, GPU, and based on that, we are able to make the prediction for how much that cost impact will be. So great question. Happy to follow up with more details and blogs and documentation there.
Thanks, Kai. We also received some pre-submitted questions, so I'm going to hop over to a few of those. One of them is, we would like to understand the options for saving cloud cost on shared cloud resources, dynamic workloads like AKS, microservices, containers, Docker.
Yeah. So if you're looking about how to manage the cost for shared resources, I think Mike touched on this a little bit with the kind of shared collections experience, where you can create a collection containing out of cluster shared resources, and then share that collections cost across a given business dimension, right? Excuse me. So hopefully that answers the how to manage the costs for out of cluster shared resources. If you're looking specifically about saving money on out of cluster shared resources, that is going to be a use case that's more appropriate for Turbonomic, or maybe Cloudability has some functionality there as well. Again, Kubecost is focused on Kubernetes and things related to Kubernetes, so that's just kind of out of scope for us.
Great. Thanks, Kai. The second pre-submitted question we have is, what is the best way to track a customer's egress data charges from a K8s cluster which hosts multiple client namespaces containing various application pods, so that the clients can be tracked and potentially cross-charged for their usage?
Awesome. Yeah, very, very nuanced question there. I'll share screen quickly to try and address it. But the best way to really kind of monitor network costs that I've seen kind of anywhere, really, to be frank, is our network cost monitoring page. Again, this is a ton of data and requires installation of our network cost daemon set. But you can kind of see here the costs. These blue chips are namespaces, right? The green chips are external resources, which the namespaces or Kubernetes resources are communicating with, and the lines here are weighted by the cost. So you can see we can drill in on Kube system, and we can see, right, okay, it looks like it's sending and receiving a lot of traffic from GCP access approval. So this is a nice way to kind of visualize it. If you're trying to kind of then build out a report, this network data also kind of appears in the allocations tab that everyone's familiar with, and you can kind of filter and aggregate to your relevant team or business unit, and then you would see kind of the network costs here. I don't know that we bifurcate or really, on this page, we don't really show, whether it's ingress or egress. We just kind of show the network charges associated with a given workload. But here, obviously, you can kind of see the ingress and egress. And like I mentioned, it is in our roadmap to improve the data export capabilities of this data. So hopefully that answers that question.
Great, thanks, Kai. And I will end here with one last pre-submitted question we have. And we did cover this a bit on the product roadmap, but there was one question, Kai, specifically about Turbonomics integration with Kubecost. And can you share any more details on the future state integrations we have planned there?
Yeah, great question. So, today, it is in beta today, but we do have the ability, if you're a Turbo customer, you can set it up in the Kubecost Helm chart such that we have support for just 4, Turbo action types, which you can now see, again, in the Kubecost Savings Insights page. You can see those actions along with their cost recommendations. So it's just for 4 actions today. the vision for our Turbo integration is to really pull in more of those recommendations, and for users who are customers of both Kubecost and Turbo, have just one UI where you can kind of see all your optimization, whether it be from Kubernetes or for non out of cluster resources. So we already had the question about how do I optimize my out of cluster resources. Well, we want to be able to pull in those Turbo actions, show them in the Kubecost UI, and now you kind of can leverage just the Kubecost UI to see the optimization opportunities you have across your infrastructure. I believe on the Turbo side as well, they're interested in pulling in some of the Kubecost data. So again, they can show the cost impact associated with their actions in their UI. I think the network monitoring data is also something that they've expressed a lot of interest in pulling in as well. And so yeah, I think we see a lot to do with Turbo, and I think a big piece of this as well is the unified agent, right? So if I am customer of Kubecost, customer of Turbonomic, right? Okay, fine, great. You can show me all the actions that are available in one UI, but man, I don't want to manage and deploy 2 different agents across all like thousands of my clusters. Maybe that's a hard lift, I think, for a lot of our users. So I think that unified agent is a huge piece as well of like making the experience better for joint customers, but also kind of expanding the world of possibility for what we can actually do on the integration, right? Maybe once the agents are unified, you can actually execute the Turbo actions from the Kubecost UI. So hopefully that answers your question. We have got a lot planned with the Turbo team, and I think we'll be making like a multi-dimensional kind of integration with them.
Great, thank you, Kai. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. Just to let you know, if you have any further questions about any of the features we covered today, you're more than welcome to reach out to our team. I did include a link to join our Slack channel on your webinar platform there. So if you join that, we have a channel for both general announcements and questions, but also a channel specifically for support. So that's always a great resource to join if you have any questions and want to connect with anyone on our team directly. If you're not a user of Slack, though, you're also welcome to email us. And our email is team-kubecost@ibm.com. So if you reach out to us there, we'll be more than happy to connect with you and schedule maybe a more personalized demo if that's something that you want to dive into. And that's all we have today. So thank you again for joining us, and we will see you soon. Bye.
Thanks a lot.